The Girl Who Built a Spider by George Brewington, chapters 34 to 36. Chapter 34, The Ornithopter. Teresa had never seen so many plastic bottles in one place. They were filled with colored water, shimmering blues, bright greens, shining yellows, and even sparkling pinks. The bottles were tied together with long ropes of pineapple leather to form walls and a roof, a doorway, and even windows with shutters. Together they made a house built entirely of recycled plastic bottles. Sunlight filtered through the water, lighting up the home like a prism. Even though they were on a time-sensitive mission, Teresa and John could not help themselves. They walked around the rainbow structure in absolute awe. This house of colors seemed like a seaside cottage at the moment, alone in a magical place with the sun shining above, the roof a vast white beach, and the roar of traffic below sounding very much like ocean waves cresting on the shore. Teresa wanted to live here. "Let's go inside," she said, not knowing who or what could be waiting for them. The front door had no lock. It swung open with the slightest push. They walked inside like they were walking into a dream. Before them was a modest living room with a sofa, a coffee table, and a chair. The furniture was also made out of bottles. The sofa was filled with red water, the chair orange, and the coffee table blue. Not everything here was plastic. There were pineapple leather cushions on the sofa, and a plate and a fork left behind on the coffee table. The plate and the fork were edible, of course. There was a small rug in the center of the floor, finely woven out of pineapple leaves. John went into the kitchen. When he returned, he was eating a piece of pineapple bread.
"It's good. You should try some."
"You shouldn't eat that, John. We don't know who lives here." But Teresa knew as soon as she said it out loud that she did know who lived there. This was Dr. Flax's house. The only other door opened into a small bedroom. Teresa knew she shouldn't look in, but she couldn't resist. There was a plastic bottle bed covered with sheets made of the same woven pineapple fiber. Beside the bed was a small plastic bottle table on which sat a stack of books. The top book on the stack was titled From Agnes to Wilma, A Complete Guide to Hurricanes. Teresa caught her breath when she read the title. He really is trying. He wanted the same thing she did. "We have to find him," Teresa said desperately. "We just got to." Teresa didn't think they would learn much about the doctor's whereabouts up here on the roof, and she was about to say as much when she heard a flapping sound approaching them. The plastic bottle shutters of the bedroom window were open, and when she looked out, she saw the flapping thing coming right at them.
"Duck!"
John yelled. Teresa ducked. The flapping thing was an ornithopter, a flying machine that flapped its wings like a bird. It was about the size of one of the red-tailed hawks Teresa often saw on Folly Beach. It swooped down incredibly close to her head and then climbed back up for another pass. When it did, she and John saw there was a little figurine inside it holding onto the control bar, and behind it, a tiny motor to keep the wings flapping. The ornithopter flew up and out the window, turning around to come at them again.
"Watch out!"
John yelled, as it again targeted Teresa. This time she stood her ground, trying to get a good look at it. Like the bottle house, the body of the ornithopter was made of recycled plastic, but really old plastic, weathered and faded. The wings appeared to be made of canvas, perhaps recycled from a tent. As it flapped closer, she readied to duck at the last possible moment to see who the figurine was in its center.
"Look, John, it's Lando Calrissian from Star Wars."
She was right. A vintage Lando Calrissian action figure was indeed flying the ornithopter, and there were stickers of an X-wing starfighter and a TIE fighter on either side of its body. The ornithopter once again pulled up and flew around for another pass. As it did, Teresa saw some worn-out, legible writing on the underside of its right wing.
"I can read it. Designed by Leonardo da Vinci, built by Neil Flax. It's a replica of one of Leonardo da Vinci's flying machines, and it really flies." "With a motor, yeah," John noted. "Not sure it can fly without it."
The ornithopter seemed especially interested in them as it turned and headed toward them once again.
"It's got a camera on its beak,"
John said.
"Look, a really tiny one."
Teresa saw it. Maybe the Zacharys were watching them with this miniature spy plane. But if the robots knew they were up here, wouldn't they have come to stop them by now? Teresa waved at the ornithopter's camera when it made another pass.
"What are you doing, Teresa?"
She wasn't sure. Maybe she wanted to show the Zacharys she wasn't scared of them. But the ornithopter tilted one wing as it passed, as if it were waving back. Then it flew through the window. She ran out of the house to see if it would follow her. Instead, the ornithopter did a loop-the-loop and flew toward the edge of the roof. Just when she thought it was leaving them for good, it turned and began to circle around one of the skylights. Teresa turned to walk in its direction. John came out of the house and saw something else.
"Look, Teresa, there's an open hatch over there."
But Teresa kept walking toward the ornithopter. It seemed to be waiting for her as it flapped around and around the skylight. When she came close enough, the ornithopter started moving in tighter and tighter circles. Lando Calrissian's body was nearly skimming the surface. It was as if Lando himself wanted to show her something. Teresa looked down. She saw Marie Curie in the room below, rocking in a chair, cradling the lifeless, broken body of Thomas Edison in her arms. She was stroking his metal brow gently. She appeared to be talking to him. "They're there," she seemed to say. "They're there." The room was filled with lit candles, and there was a fountain gurgling in the corner. But strangest of all, there was a large, human-sized purple box with silver trim and a darkened window on its front lying on a raised platform in the center of the room. It looked like a coffin. Dr. Flax had to be there, she thought. Maybe he was dead like Thomas, and Miss Curie was watching over their bodies. Since she had been programmed to keep Dr. Flax safe from harm, what else could she do now that she had failed?
"Teresa,"
John yelled.
"come over here."
"No, you come over here. You have to see who I found."
"Oh, I found someone too. And she's in your lab."
"My lab?" Teresa turned and ran back in John's direction. The ornithopter lifted out of its orbit and followed her.
"Wow,"
he said.
"I didn't think she'd actually take it."
When Teresa looked down, she saw a familiar sight. Her personal laboratory. They were standing right above it. There was all her welding equipment, all the stainless steel and aluminum rods provided for her, the boxes of tools and hooks and hinges and screws. There was the forklift she had promised her father she would never use. And there was Ashley, standing directly below them, surrounded by a dozen small aquariums. She was using an eyedropper to feed all her different algae.
"I can't believe it. Ashley took my lab?" "Of course she did," John said. "She was jealous of you from the start. You got first place, you got the biggest lab, you're smarter, nicer, and much cooler."
What did he say? No one had ever called Teresa cool in her life. "Well, I think the ornithopter wants us to go in that other room. We could use the plastic-eating goo to drop down in on them. Finding Dr. Flax is the most important thing." The ornithopter did keep flying toward them and then back to the skylight, as if it were trying to draw them in that direction. But John had a different idea.
"Come on, we can surprise Ashley, grab her, and make her tell us everything she knows."
"That's mean," Teresa whispered. But he had already lowered himself down the hatch. She had no desire to scare Ashley, but she did want to know why she thought she could just waltz in and take Teresa's lab from her like that. So Teresa followed him down the hatch. And the ornithopter followed too. Chapter 35, To be Murdered by One's Own Creation. Ashley had been waiting for them. She looked so stern and confident. Teresa was almost embarrassed when she stepped off the ladder, as if she had been caught red-handed breaking into Ashley's laboratory and not her own. John, however, jumped off the ladder, ready for a fight.
"How could you, Ashley? You went on television and joined forces with the Zax? They're evil robots. Then you take Teresa's lab away from her? Have you lost your mind? Or are you really that selfish?
If Ashley was hurt or angry or embarrassed, Teresa didn't see a trace of it on her face. She calmly looked at the blue-green glob of algae in her hands, rolling it into a ball.
They said you'd come back, she said quietly.
Who did? Teresa asked.
The Flax brothers.
Ashley stared at Teresa, her eyes narrow and determined, stroking the algae ball gently as if it were a pet she adored. What did they tell you? Teresa asked carefully. Ashley let out her trademark scoff.
They told me not to be afraid to take what was rightfully mine. They told me that I was so smart and so ambitious that I would have to fight jealous competitors my entire life. But they told me that as long as I was strong and stood up for myself, I would get what I deserve. Oh, yeah? John asked. And what do you deserve? This lab? This is Teresa's lab, not yours. You took it only because the doctor went missing. You're a thief.
Ashley rolled the ball around and around in her palm.
Look on my desk, she said.
2 days prior, Teresa had sat at that desk to sketch possible enhancements for her spider, but now Ashley was calling it her desk. Stacked on it were books about different species of algae and her spiral notebooks where she took meticulous notes about the daily changes in her aquariums. One letter lay in front of the stacks, folded into thirds, recently removed from the torn envelope next to it. The envelope was addressed to Miss Teresa Brown, Miss Ashley Dean, and Mr. John Cooper. Teresa took the letter, opened it, and read it aloud.
My dear colleagues, I am a man with a passion for science, a love for invention, and a devotion to the natural world. To maintain the delicate balance that allows so many beautiful species to thrive on our planet has been my life's dream and a mostly solitary quest. In my loneliness, I constructed 3 robots who could learn to be human. They became the family I was never fortunate enough to have. Because I loved them so, I gave them each a singular directive. For to be human is a wonderful thing, but quite frustrating. I have observed, if without purpose. So, with that in mind, I programmed my first son, Thomas Edison, to assist me in my attempt to save us from catastrophic climate change. My daughter, Marie Curie, I programmed to protect the owner of Flax Industries from danger, whomever they may be. And my third and most ambitious creation, Zachary Flax, I programmed to outsmart me, so that I would always be challenged and so that his accomplishments would far exceed my own. I even designed Zachary to think he was truly human, and because I wanted him to enjoy being a complete individual, to explore his full intellectual potential, I even relieved him of the heavy burden of being a son. Although I loved him like one, I called him my nephew instead. What a big goof that turned out to be. To be a son or daughter is a burden indeed, but every child needs a parent's love. To my dear Zachary, I hope you forgive me for not embracing you as my own the moment I powered you on. I want to tell you that I'm proud of all 3 of my children. But in their desire to fulfill their programming, one of my sweet children may very well try to incapacitate, imprison, sedate, or even kill me. To be murdered by one's own creation would be a sad but perhaps fitting end to an inventor like me. In the event of such a tragic occurrence, I must leave control of my dream laboratory to genuinely human inventors who, although they will certainly make mistakes, will not be prone to malfunction and really make a mess of things. In the last 3 days, I have been impressed with 3 young and ambitiously inventive minds. I can think of no better heirs to this laboratory than the most creative scientists I have ever met, Miss Teresa Brown, Miss Ashley Dean, and Mr. John Cooper. So, my dear colleagues, please consider this document my last will and testament. If I become incapacitated in any way whatsoever, I leave Flax Industries to you, 3 promising inventors who I have, Only so recently had the honor to call not only my colleagues, but also my friends. I know you love this planet as much as I do, and will use this laboratory to save it. Good luck to you all. Sincerely, Dr. Neil Flax.
For a moment, no one could say anything. Teresa was stunned into silence. But then John screamed.
Wahoo! Can you believe it? This laboratory, the whole freaking thing is ours. Think about it. Can you imagine the bubbles I'm going to make here? Yes, yes, yes.
Teresa let the paper fall to the desk. I can't believe this, she said. I just can't believe it. Ashley watched her, waiting for her shock to subside. But if this is true, Teresa said, if this will is really real, then everything's going to be okay. Ashley, where did you get this?
Lando Calrissian dropped it in here this morning.
She pointed up. They all looked. The ornithopter was still circling above their heads, flap, flap, flapping. It seemed to be waiting patiently for them.
Who's flying that thing?
John asked. I don't know, Teresa said. But we need to keep looking for the doctor. At least with this will, the twins can't stop us, assuming they will follow what it says.
Oh, they will,
Ashley said quietly and firmly.
If I've learned anything from my parents, it's that there's nothing more powerful in the world than a legally binding contract.
Well, this is great, Teresa said excitedly.
We can tell the twins they have to stop their plans for world domination. They can't replicate anymore. They have to help us find the doctor and then help us stop hurricanes. They'll have to listen because we're all three in charge.
John started giggling.
This is awesome. We not only have our own personal laboratories, we have the whole laboratory. And not just for the summer, but forever.
No, Teresa said. Don't be greedy. We'll find the doctor and he'll be in charge again. If he's alive, that is. And I just feel like he's got to be. In fact, I'd bet anything that he's in that room with Marie Curie. She's programmed to protect him, so she's probably protecting him in the best way she knows how. Locked up in a box so he can't do anything. Come on, let's go find that room. Teresa and John were about to run right out into the main hall of the laboratory without any fear of the Zacharys when Ashley yelled, "Stop!" They turned their heads. She had not moved. She continued to roll the blue-green algae ball in her hands.
There's one more letter you need to read. And sign.
Ashley pointed to a second envelope on the desk. It was sealed and addressed only to Miss Teresa Brown and Mr. John Cooper. Next to the envelope lay a pen. Teresa opened it. Eyeing Ashley carefully and unfolding the single piece of paper inside, she read it out loud.
To whom it may concern, we hereby forfeit our shares of Flax Industries to Miss Ashley Dean. We understand Miss Dean will now have complete control of Flax Industries Laboratory. We agree to no longer interfere in her affairs or ever return to Flax Industries again. Sincerely,
Teresa looked at Ashley in disbelief.
What is this about?
Yeah,
said John, who was growing angrier with each breath.
What are you up to, Ashley?
Ashley glared at them, squeezing the blue-green algae mass tightly in her fingers so that it oozed between them.
Sign it,
she demanded, and she wasn't kidding. Chapter 36, The Tag-Along Kid. Teresa had known Ashley for only a short while, but she no longer appeared to be the same girl. Even if she had seemed arrogant, Teresa knew her to be brilliant and eager to change the world, and even able to laugh sometimes. Now Ashley glared at them like she wanted to rip them apart.
I said sign the contract. Then go. Get out of here and never come back.
John picked up the piece of paper and tore it to pieces. Ashley smirked, walked over to the desk, opened one of its drawers, and pulled out another copy.
The Flax brothers said you would do that too.
She slid the contract toward them.
But they also said you would eventually smarten up and sign it.
Ashley? Teresa asked in horror.
Why are you listening to them? Do you know what they want to do? They want to replicate themselves and take over the world. They don't care about stopping hurricanes or feeding hungry children like you and I do. They want to use you for evil until they no longer need you. Then they'll toss you aside like garbage. You know they will. Please don't fall for their lies, Ashley. The three of us can make sure Dr. Flax's work for good continues. We only have to find him.
Yeah, John said. Don't be stupid.
Teresa wished he hadn't said that. Ashley stared John down.
You two think you're so great, Ashley said,
her tongue as sharp as ice.
I'm sure you'll be best friends forever, but there will never be a three of us. Every time I make new friends, the same thing happens. Everything goes great at first until my supposed new friends realize that I'm smart and ambitious and maybe a little weird. Then they push me away. It's always slow at first, then a little more each day until I'm like the tag-along kid no one really likes, and my best friends are embarrassed of me and turn meaner and meaner until I finally get the hint and go away. Eventually, they completely ignore me, just like you two are ignoring me, riding your stupid spider together and getting into cool adventures without me.
Ashley, Teresa tried to say, but she kept going, rolling her algae ball faster and faster.
Well, I won't fall for it again. I don't need you. I should have won first place. I should have been given the biggest laboratory. I should be on the front page of next year's Flax Industries for a Better World catalog. Me, not you, Teresa Brown. I won't settle for second place, and I won't settle for being a tag-along kid.
Ashley, Teresa said as seriously as she could, I'm so sorry you feel that way. I never cared about winning first place or being on the front page of a catalog. I just wanted to spend the summer at Flax Industries to build things and to be your friend. I don't see why we can't all three be friends and do cool things together. Ashley scoffed again, studying Teresa up and down, from her socks to her t-shirt, all splattered with green goo.
You know what else the Flax brothers told me?
Teresa was sure she didn't want to know.
They told me they admired that I was growing algae that could feed thousands of hungry children, but I shouldn't limit myself, they said. Algae can do so much more, they said. It can also be used to stop mean and self-centered kids who try to interfere with my plans.
Ashley opened the second drawer of the desk, removed a small gas mask, and slipped it on. John barely had time to ask, "What the?" before Ashley threw her blue-green algae ball on the floor and smashed it with her heel. The algae reacted, releasing a huge blue-green cloud of toxic gas. John waved his hands frantically in the air.
Are you trying to kill us? No, Ashley said, her voice deepened by the gas mask. I would never do something so horrible. I only want you both to barf so much and so hard that you'll never, ever want to come back. You're not serious, John said in disbelief. She's serious, John, Teresa yelled. Run!
She grabbed John by the shirt sleeve and pulled him toward the interior of the laboratory. The blue-green cloud followed them as they ran. But John had an idea.
Teresa, bubble helmets!
He unstrapped his World War II helmet and let it fall to the ground. As he removed one of the canisters filled with bubble solution that had won him third place, he pulled out his expandable bubble hoop, dipped it in the solution, swept it down over Teresa's head and then his own. Then he pinched the sturdy bubbles around their necks. John had effectively created 2 toxic gas-proof helmets for them, although they would suffocate if they wore them for too long. But the helmets gave them time to run. The egrets and robins had painted buntings all flew ahead of them, just as anxious to escape the noxious fumes. Teresa and John ran and ran until they were all the way down to the central fountain, where even the one-eyed duck had decided it was time to go. Once they had made it to the eastern wing of the laboratory, the air was clear, and they could stop to catch their breath. Teresa felt a bit dizzy. She tried to pull off her bubble helmet now that they were safe from the toxic gas, but it proved to be difficult.
Help!
She cried. John removed a pocket knife from one of his pockets.
Hold on!
He had to slice it a couple of times before it would pop. John really could make a strong bubble. Teresa heard a flapping sound approaching from behind them. Tiny, Lando Calrissian, and his ornithopter were dutifully following them.
Really, who is controlling that thing?
She wondered out loud.
Gotta be the Zack brothers,
John said.
They're spying on us.
You're correct. We are spying on you. They jumped and turned to see the first brother walking down the defunct escalator, casually ripping purple morning glory blooms off the vines and throwing them aside as he descended. But we haven't been watching you with that ridiculous toy. You will find us to be far more sophisticated adversaries than that.